Alrighty, so hello everybody. My name is Jack Dodd, and today I will be teaching you a little bit about the Norman's design principles that we've been learning about in class. Oops, sorry. Um, Basically just going over these different principles and looking at them through the sort of lens of everyday interactions that I have in my own personal life, and sort of just evaluating these interactions and how they could be better or how they could be worse in the various things that I use on a daily basis. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is Adobe Acrobat. This is a software that I used almost every single day at my recent co-op over the summer. And I got very familiar with it. A couple things that I noticed that were good, a couple things that I noticed that were bad that I can really apply to these lessons that we're trying to learn. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is constraints, which is basically just defined as limitations or restrictions in a design that guide users to the correct action and prevent errors. So what this software does is it has various drop-down menus that sort of show the features that are available for you in an app, except for the fact that these features are actually not all available to you. Every single one here with a red X is required a paid version of the app. And so this really just sets up people for failure because you think, oh, perfect, I can edit the PDF or export it or whatever it is, whichever one of these buttons that you'd like to press, and then you click it, and what happens is a paid pop-up just pops up, and it doesn't let you do that exact thing. So if we could implement constraints sort of better, we could prevent this from happening. Very similar thing occurs for these drop-down menus at the top of the software here, and this is the pop-up screen that occurs. I am sort of aware that this is an intentional thing. You know, they're trying to frustrate you so that you just say, oh man, whatever. I'll just buy the paid version and save myself the frustration. But I think that's a really bad design. Me personally, I loathe this software mostly because of this reason, because it feels like I can't do anything without having to pay for the full version. And really, if we just implemented constraints a little bit better, if we tooled things down to not allow the users to make errors, then I believe that it would cause a much better experience and a much more streamlined. It would save you a lot of time instead of messing around with all these features that you can't even access. One thing that I will praise this software for is its signifiers. You can look around the outside of the screen here. You can see like the signing button right there, text commenting, zoom in, zoom out, right in the bottom here, print, save, upload, all those different things. These are all sort of icons. Sorry, I should have described signifiers first. So signifiers are basically just indicators that communicate where actions should take place. So every single one of these icons just shows me exactly where I need to click in order to achieve something inside the software. And I do think that that's something that's very easy to use within this in particular interface. The signifiers really help just sort of streamline use of the product. Next, we're going to talk about the conceptual model, which is basically just the user's mental representation of how a system should work. So basically, is it intuitive, is what I think. When I'm operating the controls of it, does it sort of make sense on a conceptual level? And I'm going to use the example for underlining in this case. So as you can see here, I've underlined some text, which you can do by just touching this button here. And now if you, for example, wanted to highlight this entire paragraph, but you've accidentally extended beyond into this paragraph below, then something that I find intuitive, because it's how it works on most other Word apps, is to just highlight this underline field right here and click the underline button again. But what happens with that is that you can't, it'll just double underline it. So it won't show two underlines there, but there will be two underlines there. So it will not only not get rid of the underline that you've already put, but now when you click onto the next screen, or when you left click the underlined section, I should say, and you press this delete button, it will remain underlined as you've sort of layered two underlines on top of each other. I just find this extremely unintuitive, and it really sort of slows down the process of you learning this software. This isn't something that somebody might just know right off the bat, that you have to find the specific delete button. Very similar here. You might think that once you sign something, this is just some gibberish text that I've typed in as a signature. If I'd then like to switch that signature, if I'd like to edit it, you simply can't do that. You can't double tap, you can't click the three dots to sort of drop down everything. As you can see from the previous example, we still have very good signifiers. Everything still here makes sense of what it does, but it's just not doing the thing that I think it intuitively should do. I should be able to edit the signature. I should be able to change the words that are inside of it without deleting the whole thing and just creating a new one. So that's just another thing that I think could be improved, just sort of making the system a little bit more intuitive. And another thing about the conceptual model that's a bit tricky is that, this is just my own personal opinion on how the conceptual model should be. In a real setting, you'd probably want to survey a vast number of people in order to figure out what the proper conceptual model would be, what is intuitive to the most people, in order to make the system adhere to that. But just personally, and I think sort of in a general sense, these are the types of things that people would expect this software to do. So next, we're going to talk about two sets of wireless headphones that I have right here in front of me, actually. One of them being the AirPods Pro, and the other one being the sort of cheaper $40 brand. I believe it's called JLab Airbuds or something like that. And regardless, we all know Apple, that they're sort of the monopoly in the market at the moment. I'd say that most people have Apple software of at least one type in their home. And a big credit that they get is that it's very easy to use. And so I think that's a good sort of usage point and a sort of good example to show and learn about interfaces and how they can be good. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is discoverability here, which is basically just the ability of a user to easily find and understand how to use a feature or function inside of an interface. And both of these things have just one button that will work. But as you can see here, the AirPod controls to play and pause, just click once, to skip forward, double press, skip back, triple press. And you can also active noise cancel by just holding down. These are very easy things to do. You just start clicking the button and you sort of immediately see what's happening and how that sort of works. Whereas the JLab JBuds, they have a much longer list of controls, which you may see as a good thing, and we'll talk about later. But it's actually hard for discoverability because, for example, you just tap it once, the volume goes down a little bit, and it doesn't give you any clues that the volume goes down. You might not even notice if you're somewhere busy or anything like that. And the other thing that's really hard about the discoverability here is that different AirPods will do different things. But for example, if you only have one AirPod in your ear, or sorry, I shouldn't call them AirPods. If you only have one headphone in your ear of the knockoff version, you simply can't access the controls that are linked to the other AirPod, or the other headphone. So see, left and right here have completely separate controls, and that just makes discoverability a real mess. And sort of on that same train of thought, the feedback. Now, this is a bit of a judgment call. I find the way that feedback is used in both of these, first of all, I should define it. It's basically just providing the user with clear and immediate information about the result of their actions. And it just allows the sort of interaction process to flow freely. When you click something, it should tell you how that click has been affected. AirPods does this in a very minimalist way. When you click to pause, the music just stops, which is technically feedback, as the music stopped as soon as you click the button, meaning that button pauses the music. Whereas the JLab buds will actually speak to you and they'll say music paused, and then the music will pause. I find this sort of unnecessary, this very loud, direct feedback that the JLab gives you, just because it's sort of unnecessary. I can tell when my music has been paused. I don't need a computer announcing it to me. And it just sort of really takes you out of the mood and everything else. So just the feedback here is different for both people, for both brands, sorry. And I think that people's preference would vary depending on the person. But just personally, I prefer the Apple more silent approach, more, very obvious, but not disturbing feedback approach. Finally, we'll just talk about constraints, which we've already talked about in the previous one, but, just limiting things. And I've actually pulled up two quotes here. Doing too much makes you too little. And if you give people too many options, they're likely to choose the wrong one. You saw that big long list of controls that the JLab gives you. And I think what this actually does is it just allows you to have more mistakes. I can accidentally turn on the button, or I can accidentally turn the volume up or down. For example, if, my phone starts ringing and I don't want to answer it, I try and click the button or the number of times the button to answer the call, when really it doesn't work like that, and I accidentally hang up the call or something along those lines. And basically just it's not very user friendly, whereas the AirPods, very little features on the device itself, but that allows you to not make a lot of mistakes, as there's not really much you can do with them. There's nothing that can really go super wrong when you're using them. And finally, I just like to bring up my air fryer that I use almost every single day back at my home. And the first thing that I'd like to just point out is that this thing is extremely simple. This panel right here is pretty much all the controls that you get on the air fryer itself. The first thing that we're going to talk about is mapping, which basically just talks about the relationship between controls and their effects. So sort of location-based stuff. As you can see, we have the one button, we have the two button. This is a two-sided oven. So very clearly, when you press one, you're controlling the one on the left. When you press two, you're controlling the one on the right. Even little things like, for example, the temperature up and down arrows that you can see there, they're on the exact same side as the time up and down arrows. So, you wouldn't want to switch the increase and decrease controls from one side to the other, as you've already sort of trained somebody when they use the first side, like the temperature adjustment, to then change the time. If you switch those two buttons locations, it would just be a nightmare. I would even argue that intuitively the right is sort of seen as an increase, whereas the left is seen as a decrease. If you can think about turning a knob, you turn a knob to the right to turn it on, or to turn it up, and turn it on to the left to turn it down. So I think that just the location of the increase and decrease functions on those two buttons just really help you out. And the next thing now we're just going to talk about is affordances. This just talks about basically clues that suggest how an object or interface element should be used by a specific user based on design. So think about, a door with a handle on it, a forwards pulling, a door with just a flat slate, a forwards pushing. And very similarly here, all of these buttons are beautifully raised. You know to press them right away. There's no dials, there's no touch screen things. They're all raised buttons and very clearly can be pressed. And finally, we're just going to touch on signifiers again, very similar to the Adobe Acrobat. This thing has absolutely beautiful signifiers. You can see all labels, temperature, time, air fry, bake, roast, reheat. They all say exactly what they're going to do, and they don't lie to you about it. It makes it very easy to do things like use the air fryer in a very simple and very easy way. I didn't have to look up a manual for this thing. I didn't even have to ask a roommate how to use it. This was just put in my house at the start of the year, and I was able to pick it up right away. And so thank you guys very much. That's all for my presentation today, and I hope that it was good.